Hello all, welcome to Paritranaya. In this class, we shall discuss about the Central Council of Ministers. When it comes to executive, Central Council of Ministers, it plays a very important role and important part of Union Executive. So already in the previous classes, we have seen what is Union Executive. So Union Executive, it consists of President, Vice President, Prime Minister, Council of Ministers, Attorney General of India. So together we refer to them as Union Executive. And we have already seen that there are three important wings. One is legislature, next is executive, and the third one is judiciary. Legislature is involved in making laws, whereas executive is involved in implementing the laws. So when it comes to implementations, these are the various entities involved: President, Vice President, Prime Minister, Council of Ministers, and Attorney General of India. So we have already discussed about President and Prime Minister. So today we shall discuss about a next important entity of the Union Executive, that is Council of Ministers. So what kind of political system do we have in India? In India, we have parliamentary system of government. Parliamentary system of government. There are different types of government as well, but for time being we'll be focusing on only Indian government, that is parliamentary system of government. So from where have we taken this system of government, or from where have we borrowed? We have borrowed this type of government from Britain, or we are following the British pattern. And the obvious reason is because we were ruled by Britishers, and apart from that, the important features or positive features of parliamentary system has had greater influence on our constitutional framers. So that's why we have adopted parliamentary system of government. So there are many basic aspects associated with parliamentary system, but one important thing that stands out is in parliamentary system we have Council of Ministers. So whenever I write COM, it means I am referring to Council of Ministers. So in any parliamentary system, the fundamental is like this: there will be a Council of Ministers, and who will be the head of Council of Ministers? Prime Minister. Prime Minister will be its head. Okay. So as India also has a parliamentary system of government, we also have Council of Ministers, and Council of Ministers is headed by Prime Minister. Is headed by Prime Minister. Okay. Prime Minister. So we know, in order to take any decision or in order to make any law for ourselves, so we should be involved. But as the country is very large, close to 130 crore population, so all of them we cannot directly participate and in the law making process or in day-to-day decision making process. So that's why what we do, so common people of this country, so we send our representatives to Lok Sabha. So as common man, we send our representatives to Lok Sabha. So how many representatives do we send here? 545. Similarly, not directly but indirectly, we also send our representatives to Rajya Sabha. How many? 245. So here directly people will not elect, but MLAs will participate in the election. So we will be discussing about that later on. But for time being, we shall understand that both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha have representatives of people, either directly or indirectly. So why we have these representatives? Because we cannot participate in the day-to-day decision making. We cannot participate in the law making process directly. So on behalf of us, our representatives will make laws for us. Okay, will make laws for us. Apart from making laws, we also need implementation body. So who will implement it? So if all of the 545 people are involved in the implementation process on day-to-day basis, it will be a bit difficult. It will be a bit tedious. That is why among these 790 people, only few people, hardly around 60 to 70 people, okay, hardly around 60 to 70 people, so they will become ministers. They will become ministers. Okay. So rather than 790 people taking decision together, 545 plus 245 on day-to-day basis, only these 60 to 70 members who are called as ministers, so they will be involved in implementing the law, in implementing the policies. Okay. In order to make our discussions easier, what I will take, I will just assume that there are 50 ministers. There are just 50 ministers. Okay, ministers. So here we understood common people or elected representatives in Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha. So in order to make decisions on day-to-day basis, we have a smaller body whom we call it as ministers, and all the ministers together we call it as Council of Ministers. Okay, Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers. Now let us see. Let us have a discussion about these ministers. So article number 74 of the Constitution. What does it say? It says that there should be a Council of Ministers, and it should be headed by Prime Minister. Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. So now henceforth I will not be using Prime Minister. Whenever I say Council of Minister, you should assume that Prime Minister will be its head. So every time whenever I make a reference to Council of Ministers, I will not be making a reference to Prime Minister. So it implies that whenever I say Council of Ministers, automatically Prime Minister will be its head. Okay, its head. So now Council of Ministers aid and advise President. It means advice will be given to President by Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers, they will advise President. Advise in the sense, so some work has to be done. So final signature who has to do? In the executive, President has to do. So Council of Ministers will suggest President to sign it. Okay, to sign it. So for example, if at all we want to make a new law, at that time also President signs. So on day-to-day basis, so let us assume we want to bring or we want to declare emergency. We want to declare emergency. So what is emergency? We shall see later on. Okay, we shall see later on. But for time being, you just understand that there exists a concept called as emergency. So we have a separate topic for that. We will be discussing about that. So when Council of Ministers, they advise President to declare emergency. So President should be bound by it, and he should declare emergency, because whatever Council of Ministers say, he should agree to it. Okay, he should abide by it. So article number 74 says that there should be a Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. They will aid and advise President, and President has to act accordingly. Okay, President has to act accordingly as per the directions given by Council of Ministers. Next, okay, President will act according to the advice given by Council of Ministers. But does he have a choice to send it back saying that I am not happy with your decision, can you make the corrections? So does he have that right? Yes, he has that right for only once. So first time when Council of Ministers will send request to President, or when they'll ask President to declare emergency, so he may send it back saying that reconsider your decision. Okay, reconsider your decision. In that case, Council of Ministers, they'll resend it. Okay, they'll resend it second time. This is first time and second time. So second time when the Council of Ministers send the same decision back to President, now this time President cannot send it back. Okay, President cannot send it back. He has to accept and he has to sign. That's why we say Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister will aid and advise President, and President has to act accordingly. Okay, but once he can send it for reconsideration, and once he receives the reconsidered advice back from Council of Ministers, it is binding on President. Okay, second time when he receives it, it is binding. Okay, it is binding. Next, very important, no court enquiry. Whatever the advice that Council of Ministers have given to President, whatever the advice is there, so what kind of advice you have given, no court can ask a question, no court can interfere. Okay, no court can interfere with respect to the advice that has been given by the Council of Ministers to President. So why is there such a provision? Because both of them, they enjoy confidence relationship. Who all? Council of Ministers and President. So whatever the discussions that happen between Council of Ministers and President, it should not be revealed. Okay, that is why court does not have the power to interfere in the advice that has been given by the Council of Ministers to President. Very important. Next, article number 75. Article number 75. It says that there should be a Prime Minister. There should be a Prime Minister who is appointed by President. So Prime Minister is appointed by President. Next, it also says that all the other ministers apart from Prime Minister, we also have other ministers, ordinary ministers, right? So totally Prime Minister plus other ministers 50. So whom we call it as Council of Ministers. So other ministers are also appointed by President. But based on whose recommendation? Based on Prime Minister's recommendation. Okay, Prime Minister's recommendation. And already in the previous class we have seen that Prime Minister is also appointed by President, but based on what condition? He will appoint the leader of the majority party in Lok Sabha as Prime Minister. Okay, already we have seen few of these things. Next, very important. So Prime Minister plus Council of Ministers together, what should be the maximum strength? What should be the maximum strength? So very important. So the maximum strength should be 15% of total strength of Lok Sabha. Total strength of Lok Sabha. So Prime Minister plus total Council of Ministers together, it should not exceed 15% of the total strength of the Lok Sabha. So what is the total strength of the Lok Sabha? The total strength of the Lok Sabha is presently 545. Okay, 545. So when you calculate 15% for it, approximately it comes somewhere around 80 or 81. Okay, so let us make it as a whole figure as 80. Okay, 80. So what does it indicate? It means total number of ministers, including Prime Minister, should not exceed 80. We cannot have more than 80 ministers. So whether this provision exists from 1950 when we got our constitution? No. It was introduced in 2003 through 91st amendment. Okay, through 91st amendment. So before 2003, there was no limitation on the number of ministers that we can have. Okay, then why was this introduced? Because of the defections that were taking place. Okay, because of the defections. So I'm using a term called as defection. Okay, I'm using a term called as defection. So what is defection? So defection is a person belonging to one party. A person belonging to one party will move to another party. Okay, will move to another party. So in detail, we will be discussing with examples in the future. But for time being, we shall understand that if a MP of JDS comes to BJP, okay, if a MP of Indian National Congress Party, if he comes to BJP with the intention of becoming a minister, okay, with the intention of becoming a minister, then what happens? It will lead to instability. How it will lead to instability? Because all the people or most of the MPs of JDS, they may leave that party and they may come to BJP only with the intention of becoming what? Ministers. So when a person switches from one party to another, that is called as defection. Okay, defection. And we have some provisions which tries to prevent this defection. So that is present in the 10th schedule. It is called as anti-defection law. So we will be discussing in detail about the defection and anti-defection law that we have in the forthcoming classes. But for a time being, we shall assume that why we have limited the total number of ministers to 15% to avoid or to prevent defection. Okay, to prevent defection. Only at this superficial level we shall understand. Okay. Next. Usually this prime minister or ministers, they come from where? Either they come from Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Okay, so few of them can be picked from Lok Sabha or few of them can be picked from Rajya Sabha. So who has that power? Prime Minister, because Prime Minister will recommend President to appoint ministers. Okay, ministers. There is no hard and fast rule that how many people have to be appointed from Lok Sabha and how many have to be appointed from Rajya Sabha. There is no hard and fast rule. So any number of people can be appointed from Lok Sabha and any number of people can be appointed from Rajya Sabha, provided that the total strength does not exceed 80. That is 15% of the total strength of the Lok Sabha. Okay. Next, another important fact which we are already aware of. What is that? A person who is neither a member of Lok Sabha nor a member of Rajya Sabha, not a member of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, so he can remain a minister. He can become either a prime minister or he can remain an ordinary minister for how many months? For 6 months. Okay, for 6 months. After 6 months, if he wants to continue as a minister, then within those 6 months period, he has to be either elected or he has to get nominated. He has to get elected or he has to get nominated either to Lok Sabha or to Rajya Sabha. So within this 6 month period, if he gets either elected to Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha or gets nominated to Rajya Sabha, then he can continue as minister beyond 6 months. Okay, beyond 6 months. Next, very important, defection disqualified for minister. So very important. So later on we'll see that a member of Lok Sabha or a member of Rajya Sabha can be disqualified. Okay, a member of Lok Sabha or in general a MP can be disqualified. Okay, can be disqualified. There are various grounds for disqualification. One is constitutional ground, other is Representation of People Act grounds, third one is defection ground. So we will be discussing about all these different grounds later on. Okay, later on. But for time being, we have already seen what is defection. When a person switches from one party to another. When a person switches from one party to another, okay, that is called as defection. So when defections take place, let us assume a person A, okay, he is a MP, he is a Lok Sabha MP. So if he switches from Indian National Congress to BJP, then he will lose Lok Sabha seat. So he will no longer be what? Member of Lok Sabha. Now after coming to BJP, can he be made a minister? Yes, we already have a provision that without being a member of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, he can become minister for 6 months. So here BJP might attract Congress MP saying that if you come to us, we will make you minister. Whether you are a member of Lok Sabha or not, we will make you minister. So in order to prevent this, okay, what we have? So there are certain provisions. What is that provision? Defection disqualified. Means those who have lost the membership of Lok Sabha because of defection, such members, they are disqualified from becoming ministers. Such people, they are disqualified from becoming ministers. Again, this provision, whether it was present from 1950, no. It was introduced again in 2003 through 91st Constitutional Amendment. So what was the major intention of introducing this provision? The major intention of introducing this provision was to again prevent defection. Okay, to prevent defection. So here we saw that two important provisions are there to prevent defection. One is the total number of ministers cannot exceed 15% of the total strength of the Lok Sabha. Another one is the people or Lok Sabha MPs or Rajya Sabha MPs who have been disqualified on the grounds of defection, they cannot be made ministers. Next, we have already seen. So once a person becomes ministers, how long he will remain as a minister or how long he will stay in office? He will stay in office as long as he enjoys the pleasure of president. It means as long as president is happy, a minister will remain as a minister. Okay, will remain as a minister. And we have already seen. So prime minister can ask a minister to resign. And if he does not agree, prime minister can recommend president to remove the minister. Next, we have already seen that Council of Ministers, they are collectively responsible to Lok Sabha. So what do we understand by responsibility? If I am responsible to you, then if I am commit some mistakes, then I am answerable to you. Okay, I am answerable to you. Similarly, the elected representatives of these people, our Lok Sabha MPs, our Rajya Sabha MPs, to whom they are responsible? They are responsible to common people. Why they are responsible to common people? Because the common people have elected them. So here we shall understand this. So common people, okay, people. So here we have MPs, okay, we have MPs, Lok Sabha MP and Rajya Sabha MP. To common people who are responsible, these people, MPs, they are responsible to common people, to 130 crore people. Now next, day-to-day basis, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha MPs, they cannot meet. So 545 here and 245 here. That's why what we have? We have Council of Ministers. So here we have 50 ministers. So now they are responsible to Lok Sabha. Okay, they are responsible to whom? Lok Sabha, 545 people. It means if Council of Ministers perform any mistake, then Lok Sabha has the power to remove the Council of Ministers. To remove the Council of Ministers. That's why Council of Ministers should do their job in a way that satisfies Lok Sabha. Okay, that satisfies Lok Sabha. If Council of Ministers, if they do not satisfy Lok Sabha, then Lok Sabha has the power to remove the Council of Ministers at any point of time. Okay, at any point of time. How? By using no confidence motion. We have already seen that with the help of no confidence motion, Lok Sabha can remove Council of Ministers. Okay, ministers. Next. So when I say minister, it also includes Prime Minister as well. So we already seen that ministers they take oath. They take two oath. One is oath of office, another is oath of secrecy. So what does that oath consist of is not important. Okay, it's not important from the examination point of view. But they do take two different types of oath. One is oath of office, another one is oath of secrecy. So who will administer the oath to ministers? President. President will administer the oath to ministers. Another very important thing. So deputy PM. So there was a case which had gone to Supreme Court. So in that case, Supreme Court declared that even deputy PM should also take oath. Okay, should also take oath. So in our constitution, we have a position mentioned as Prime Minister, but there is no mention of a position called as Deputy Prime Minister. So a question had arisen whether they should take oath or not, but as per the Supreme Court's judgment, even a Deputy Prime Minister is supposed to take oath. Okay, very important. Is supposed to take oath. Is supposed to take oath. Next. Minister's salary. Who determines the salary of ministers? So Parliament will determine the salary. Means how much salary we should pay to the ministers is determined by Parliament. Next, very important. Minister, he can participate in other house, vote only in own house. So very important to understand. So what is that? Now we already know. Here we have Lok Sabha. Here we have Rajya Sabha. Okay. Lok Sabha has its own building. Rajya Sabha has its own chamber. Now here we have Council of Ministers. Okay. So totally 50 ministers. Okay. 50 ministers. Now this Council of Ministers will have members of both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha as well as outsiders. Okay. So I'll take an example. One person of Lok Sabha. One person of Lok Sabha who is a minister. So let us assume he is Home Minister. He is Home Minister. Another person from Rajya Sabha, he is, let us assume, Agricultural Minister. Agricultural Minister. Agriculture Minister. Okay. Next we shall consider one more example. A person who is neither a member of Lok Sabha nor a member of Rajya Sabha, he is also minister. So that possibility is also there. So let us assume he is Defense Minister. He is Defense Minister. He or she is Defense Minister. Okay. Defense Minister. So Home Minister belongs to Lok Sabha, Agriculture Minister belongs to Rajya Sabha, and Defense Minister, he neither belongs to Lok Sabha nor to Rajya Sabha. But all the three, they are part of Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers. Now, in Lok Sabha, whenever any kind of discussions are going on, okay, whenever any kind of discussions are going on, so I'll call him as HM, I'll call him as DM, I'll call him as AM. Okay, AM, DM. Now, Home Minister, can he participate here in Lok Sabha's discussions? Obviously, he can participate because he is a member of Lok Sabha. Next, whether Agriculture Minister can participate here in Rajya Sabha? Obviously, he can participate because he is a member of Rajya Sabha. Now, next my question is whether Defense Minister, can he participate in the discussions of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha? Yes, he can participate in both Lok Sabha as well as in Rajya Sabha. Okay, Rajya Sabha. Similarly, Home Minister can participate in Rajya Sabha even though he is a member of Lok Sabha. Similarly, Agricultural Ministry, he can also participate in the discussions of Lok Sabha even though he is a member of Rajya Sabha. So here what we understood. So when it comes to ministers, they have the right to participate in the discussions of the other house. Okay, other house. So here, member of one house, he could participate in the discussions of the other house. Similarly, a person who is neither a member of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, he could participate in the discussions of other house. Okay, but one important thing that we need to remember here is, so ministers other house speak, vote only in their own house. So what does it mean? It means when it comes to Lok Sabha, if there is any decision to be taken and it requires voting, okay, if it requires voting, then who can vote? Only Home Ministry can vote because he belongs to Lok Sabha. Defense Ministry cannot vote because he is not a member of Lok Sabha. Similarly, Agricultural Ministry, he cannot vote because he is not a member of Lok Sabha. When it comes to Rajya Sabha and any decision has to be taken and it requires voting, here Agriculture Ministry can vote because he belongs to Rajya Sabha. Next, Defense Ministry. Defense Ministry, he cannot vote. Home Ministry, he cannot vote. Okay. He cannot vote. So very important. So ministers, they can speak in other house but vote only in their own house. In the other house, they cannot vote. They cannot vote. Next, another important thing. So in 1971, Supreme Court said that dissolution, whenever Lok Sabha is dissolved, so ministry will not be dissolved and it will continue to exist. It will continue to exist. So what does it mean? So for example, now Lok Sabha, after election, once the Lok Sabha comes, let us assume on January 1, 2021. So Lok Sabha will come. So ordinarily, Lok Sabha's life will be for 5 years. So when it will end? It will end on December 31, 2025. Okay, 2025. Now it ends on December 31, 2025. So let us assume somewhere on September 30, 2025. September 30, 2025, Lok Sabha has been dissolved. For some reasons, Lok Sabha has been dissolved. We have already seen that who has the power to dissolve Lok Sabha? President has the power to dissolve Lok Sabha. So let us assume on September 30, 2020, President has dissolved Lok Sabha. Okay, dissolved Lok Sabha. Now in this case, for this remainder period, October, November and December, there will be no Lok Sabha or there will be no members of Lok Sabha because it is dissolved. But how about ministers? So next Lok Sabha members will come only after election. So for these 3 months of period, whether there will be ministers? Yes. Through Supreme Court decision, we come to know that even though Lok Sabha is dissolved, so for this remainder period, so whatever the existing ministers are there, they'll continue. Okay. So ministers will continue until the new Lok Sabha is formed and the new ministers arrive. Okay. Important. Next, at different places of our constitution, we see that satisfaction of president. If president is satisfied, okay, such kind of terms do appear. So what do we understand by president satisfaction? So again, Supreme Court has given an interpretation. So whenever we say president's satisfaction, it is not president's satisfaction, but it is the satisfaction of Council of Ministers. Okay, when I say president's satisfaction, it means Council of Ministers satisfaction. So we have already seen what kind of head is president. He is de jure or de facto. He is de jure, just naam ke vaste, for name's sake. Whereas Council of Ministers, so they are the real executive. Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. So whenever we say president's satisfaction, it implies that it is a satisfaction of the Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. Again, this interpretation was given by Supreme Court in a judgment of 1974. Okay, judgment of 1974. Next, when it comes to responsibility of ministers, so first we shall discuss about collective responsibility. Collective responsibility. So in any parliamentary system of government, so what is the fundamental principle? The fundamental principle is collective responsibility. Okay, collective responsibility. So what is the collective responsibility? We shall look here. So article number 75 says that Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to Lok Sabha. They swim and sink together. Okay, Lok Sabha can pass no confidence motion and COM has to resign. So we shall see these things. Now we have Lok Sabha 545 members. Next we have Council of Ministers 50 members. Okay, 50 members. Now these 50 members, they are responsible to Lok Sabha. It means they have to work according to the wishes of Lok Sabha. Okay, if they are not working according to the wishes of Lok Sabha, then Lok Sabha can remove them. So generally we'll use the term that Council of Ministers enjoy the confidence of Lok Sabha. So what do we understand by this term confidence? We say that Council of Ministers enjoy the confidence of Lok Sabha means we have support of 273 or more members. If Council of Ministers enjoy support of more than 273 members of Lok Sabha, then there is no problem. But if less than 273 members of Lok Sabha start supporting Council of Ministers, then it will cause a problem. It means Lok Sabha does not have a confidence on ministers. So why 273? Because 545 divided by 2, that is 272.5. So when you convert it to whole number, it becomes 273. So there should be an support of absolute majority. So at least half of the members should support. Okay, support. So Council of Ministers have to work according to the wishes of Lok Sabha. If it does not work properly, then Lok Sabha can remove them. How? By passing no confidence motion. Okay. So Lok Sabha can pass a no confidence motion and remove the entire Council of Ministers. So in this way, Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to Lok Sabha. Okay, Lok Sabha. Next, we have also already seen who can dissolve Lok Sabha. President will dissolve Lok Sabha. President can dissolve Lok Sabha. But whether President can dissolve Lok Sabha based on his whims and fancies? No. President cannot dissolve Lok Sabha according to his wishes. So his choices are very limited. He can dissolve Lok Sabha only when Council of Ministers advise President. Only when Council of Ministers advise President, he can dissolve Lok Sabha. Next, very important. President will not oblige Council of Ministers that has lost confidence of Lok Sabha. What does it indicate? So President has to act as per the directions of the Council of Ministers. President has to act as per the directions of the Council of Ministers. But he will act as per the directions of the Council of Ministers only if the Council of Ministers enjoy confidence of Lok Sabha. So when I say that Council of Ministers enjoy confidence of Lok Sabha, it means they have to have a support of more than 273 members. If Council of Ministers have support of less than 273 members, then President need not oblige. Means he need not act as per the direction of the Council of Ministers. Okay, very important, very important. So President will not oblige if the Council of Ministers have lost confidence. Okay, confidence of Lok Sabha. Next, cabinet decisions are binding on all ministers. So they should defend. If they disagree, then they have to resign. So we shall look into it with the help of an example. Now, cabinet decisions. So later on we will be seeing. So what we will be seeing? So here we have Council of Ministers. So totally how many ministers? 50. Okay, 50. So just to make our discussions easier. Among these 50 ministers, there will be 10 or 15 important ministers. So we call those ministers as cabinet ministers. So in order to make our discussions easier, I'll just take it as 10. So within Council of Ministers, we have 10 cabinet ministers. Okay, cabinet ministers. So what will these cabinet ministers do? So all the 50 ministers, Council of Ministers, they cannot meet on a day-to-day basis. So cabinet ministers, as the number is very less, so they will be meeting very frequently. They will be meeting very frequently. They are very powerful ministers. Okay, they'll be very powerful ministers. And whatever the decisions they take, all the other 50 ministers, they have to accept it and work accordingly. So now let us assume there are different ministers. Okay, different ministers. So Minister 1, Minister 2, Minister 3, Minister 4, Minister 5. Okay, Minister 5, different ministers. So next, let us assume, okay, Minister 1, Minister 2, Minister 3. So total Minister 5, Minister 6, and so on. Totally Minister 50. Totally we have 50 ministers. Okay, 50 ministers. Now let us assume we want to take a new decision. Let us assume a decision related to building a new medical college. Okay, just a simple example I am taking. So building new medical college. Okay, medical college. Now this decision will be what they'll start discussing. All the 50 ministers or 10 ministers, they'll start discussing. Okay, or if you are getting confused, you just assume that all the 50 ministers will start discussing whether we need to have a medical college or not. So let us assume finally a decision will be made that medical college should be there. Okay, medical college should be there. So let us assume 49 people, they will say yes. One person, he is not happy, he will say no. Among the 50 ministers, one person will say we don't want a medical college, but 49 are in favor of this decision. So here collective responsibility means one more thing. What is that? So whatever the decisions the cabinet has taken, so binding on all ministers. Okay, binding on all ministers. So whether one person, so that one person should not disagree, he should agree with it. And if he is not happy with the decision which has been taken by the cabinet, then what he can do? He can, if he disagrees, then he can resign. So first is, whatever the decision has been taken, he should defend. He should defend the decision taken by the government. If he is not ready to defend, if he disagrees with the decision, then what he can do? If he disagrees, then he should resign. Whether such examples exist in the history? Yes, such an example exists. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, with respect to a difference he had with respect to Hindu Code Bill, so he was not happy with the decision that was taken by the cabinet. So that's why he disagreed with the decision and he resigned. Okay, he resigned. So such examples do exist. Next, individual responsibility. So apart from the collective responsibility which we saw above, which was enforced with the help of no confidence motion and few other tools, next we also have individual responsibility. Okay, individual responsibility. So how an individual responsibility is enforced by president. How? By president. So a president can ask a minister to resign. If minister is not working properly or as per the expectations of prime minister, then prime minister will ask a minister to resign. But if minister does not obey his orders, then what prime minister will do? Prime minister will ask a president to remove him from the office. Okay, to remove him from the office. So what does it ensures? It ensures that PM is upholding the rule of collective responsibility. PM is upholding the rule of collective responsibility. One more important thing in India is no legal responsibility. No legal responsibility. So P is President's order for public act, not countersigned. Okay, countersigned. So what does it mean? Now we have mentioned that there are different laws. So for any law to become an act, okay, for any bill to become an act, it has to be passed in Lok Sabha, it has to be passed in Rajya Sabha, and it has to be signed by president. Now when we say bill or act, every act is administered by a particular ministry. Okay, every act is administered by a particular ministry. For example, if I take an act, one act called as Environment Protection Act. Environment Protection Act. Okay. So there is an act called as Environmental Protection Act. So this act is administered by a ministry. So we know that there are totally 50 different ministries. So this act is administered, or this act is implemented by a ministry called as Ministry of Environment. Ministry of Environment. So when this bill was passed, it was passed in Lok Sabha, it was passed in Rajya Sabha, and finally president signed it. After that it became act. Okay, after that it became act. In UK, the practice is that when president signs it, afterwards later on, environment minister should also sign. He should make a small sign. But in India, there is no such provision. So a minister is not responsible. He is not supposed to do countersign. Okay, countersign. So it means in India, a minister has no legal responsibility of countersigning, unlike in UK. Okay. Next, we have already seen courts are barred. Courts are barred from advice in inquiring into the advice that has been tendered to president. Okay. So whatever the advice the Council of Ministers have given to president, so courts are debarred from inquiring into it. Okay. What kind of advice that they have given. Okay, that they have given. So already we have seen. Next, composition of Council of Ministers. Okay, composition of Council of Ministers. So when we say Council of Ministers or composition of Council of Ministers, So the Council of Ministers, among the 50 ministers, there are different hierarchy of ministers. So some of them are called as cabinet ministers, some of them are called as ministers of state, and some of them are called as deputy ministers. Okay, deputy ministers, cabinet ministers, ministers of state, and deputy ministers. All the three different categories of ministers together, we call them as what? Council of Ministers. So among these ministers, who are more powerful? Cabinet ministers are more powerful. So how many cabinet ministers are there? So roughly around 10 to 15. Okay, and they'll be holding important positions like home minister, defense, etc. Okay, defense, etc. Next, ministers of state. So in detail, we'll be discussing about the ministers of state as and when we encounter through our current affairs. So here we need to understand that. So ministers of state, so either independent charge, they can be given independent charge, or they can become subordinates to what? Cabinet ministers as well. Okay, attached to cabinet minister. So here what we have to understand, cabinet minister, whenever there is a cabinet minister, he will be given a complete independent charge. Complete independent charge. For example, home minister. Okay, home minister. When it comes to minister of state, they may be given independent charge. For example, they may be given completely agriculture minister responsibility, or they may be attached to, for example, already there will be a cabinet minister who will be holding the responsibility of home ministry. So a minister of state can become a, what, can be attached to a cabinet minister. Okay, can be attached to a cabinet minister. It means minister of state is slightly inferior in position compared to cabinet minister. Okay, cabinet minister. Similarly, we have deputy ministers. So deputy ministers, they cannot be given independent charge. Okay, they are attached to cabinet minister. Either they are subordinate to cabinet minister or they are subordinate to minister of state. Okay, minister of state. So here one important thing that we need to remember is, when I say ministers of state, we are not referring to a state like Karnataka, Maharashtra. No. So at the central level itself, some of the ministers will be called as ministers of state. Okay, ministers of state. Next. So ministers of state and deputy ministers, they will not attend the meetings of cabinet. Okay, they will not attend the meetings of cabinet unless they are invited. Okay, unless they are invited, they will not attend the meetings of cabinet. Next, so they differ in rank and all. Next, previously there was a position of parliament secretaries, but now this position does not exist, so it is not important. Okay, it is not important. Next, council of ministers versus cabinet. Okay, versus cabinet. So here we need to understand that cabinet is a very powerful body. Okay, very powerful body. So in the council of ministers, so which consists of somewhere around 50 members. So among them, again around 10 to 15 members, they are called as cabinet ministers. They are very powerful. So on behalf of the 50 ministers, these 10 or 15 ministers, they will take all the important decisions, and whatever the important decisions they have taken, it has to be implemented by the entire council of ministers. And this is how we ensure the collective responsibility, which we discussed just now. So it is the highest decision making authority. Okay, in our political system, the highest decision making authority is cabinet. Okay. Next, just remember few of these points related to cabinet. It's the chief policy formulating body of central government. The chief policy formulating body of central government. Next, it is the supreme executive authority of central government. It is the chief coordinator of central administration. Next, it is the advisory body to president. So we have seen that council of ministers will advise to president, but among the council of ministers, the most powerful body is what? Cabinet. Okay, and whatever it advises to president, that is binding on president. Next, whenever there is a crisis, so which is the chief crisis manager? So the chief crisis manager during all emergency situations, it is cabinet. Okay, it is cabinet. Next, it deals with all major legislative and financial matters. So later on we shall see how exactly it deals with what major legislative and financial matters, but it is the most powerful body when it comes to both legislative as well as financial matters. Next, control over appointments. Later on we shall see that there are various constitutional authorities. Few of them we have already seen. It may be Union Public Service Commission, or it may be Comptroller and Auditor General, or Election Commission. So all these are various constitutional bodies. So the key positions to these posts or these constitutional bodies will be the appointments to these key positions. They take place through cabinet. Okay, so they have the control over the appointments to various important constitutional authorities. Next, cabinet plays a very important role in foreign policies and affairs. So already in the previous class we have seen that. So prime minister plays a very important role in shaping the foreign policy, and when it comes to cabinet, which consists of 10 to 15 ministers, among them the most powerful will be what, prime minister. So he will be influencing the what, decision making process of the cabinet. So in this fashion, cabinet plays an important role in foreign policies and affairs. It means with which nation what kind of relationship have to be maintained. Okay, maintained. Next, whatever we have discussed, just we shall summarize it. So through cabinet and cabinet, council of ministers versus cabinet. So council of ministers, there are 60 to 70 ministers, whereas cabinet consists of 15 to 20 ministers. They are most powerful. So when we say council of ministers, it consists of all ministers, but when it comes to cabinet, only cabinet ministers. Okay, hardly around 15 to 20 ministers. Next, no collective functions. It means they do not meet regularly, okay, and they do not make any kind of decisions, okay, and does not meet as a body to transact business. Then who will meet frequently? So cabinet will meet frequently, once in a week. That's why they make what, collective function. So collectively they function, and whatever the decision they have taken, they will just inform to council of ministers, and they have to follow it. Okay, they have to follow it. So council of ministers, they enjoy power just in theory, but they enjoy power in reality. Okay, so practically the power is exercised by cabinet. Next, what are the functions of council of ministers? So whatever has been determined by the cabinet, so those functions will be performed by council of ministers. So what does cabinet does? Cabinet, it directs to council of ministers. So it tells council of ministers what is the work that you are supposed to do, and whatever the work cabinet assigns to council of ministers, that is binding on them. Okay, that is binding on council of ministers. Next, it supervises whether council of ministers are implementing the things properly or not. So it supervises implementation, whereas the responsibility of implementation lies with council of ministers. Council of ministers. Next, so council of ministers, whether this term appears in the constitution? Yes, council of ministers is a constitutional body, and this term appears in article number 74 and 75. So UPSC very oftenly it focuses on questions like whether the following is a constitutional body, and if at all a question appears asking whether council of ministers is a constitutional body, yes, council of ministers is a constitutional body. Okay, body. Similarly, cabinet, whether cabinet is a term present in our constitution? Yes. When we got independence, when we got our constitution, initially this term was not there in the constitution, but through 44th constitutional amendment we have inserted a term called as cabinet. Okay, cabinet. But there is no description of power and functions. And what do we do when it comes to what powers of cabinet? So we follow the conventions of parliamentary system. Example is Britain. So whatever the practices that are present in Britain, the same practices we have adopted when it comes to cabinet. Okay, cabinet. And when it comes to council of ministers also, size and classification not mentioned. It means constitution only mentions about the council of ministers. It does not say how many members should be there in council of ministers. And it also does not classify like what, minister of state, deputy minister. So all these classifications do not exist in the constitution. Next, so then what will be the size? The size of the council of ministers is determined by prime minister. Next, then constitution does not give us any kind of classification like deputy minister or minister of state. But in our system, we already have ministers like ministers of state and deputy ministers. So from where have we borrowed this practice? This practice we have borrowed, or this classification practice we have borrowed based on the parliamentary conventions which are present in Britain. So whatever the practice is there in the Britain, so the same kind of practices we have adopted in India. Next, so legal sanction means the different classification, that is council, ministry of state, next deputy ministers. So all these definitions are present where? In an act called as Salary and Allowances Act 1952. Okay, so it also includes provisions related to deputy minister. Okay, deputy minister. Next, so we have seen that council of ministers is collectively responsible to lower house, that is Lok Sabha. Okay, Lok Sabha. So Lok Sabha can remove the council of ministers if they are not functioning properly according to the wishes of Lok Sabha. Next, it enforces collective responsibility. Cabinet enforces collective responsibility by ensuring that all the ministers are working as per the directions of the cabinet. Okay. Next, so as you go through the books, especially Lakshmikant, so there are some role descriptions. Someone will describe about the what cabinet and prime minister. All the different roles have been described. So these roles, they are not important from the exam point of view. Similarly, we come across a term called as kitchen cabinet. So such a practice does not exist in India. So even this is not important from the exam point of view. So as a syllabus, it goes on becoming very bulky. So we need to understand which are important and which are not important. So here, confidently, we should be able to ignore these aspects. Okay? These aspects which are not important from the examination point of view. Next, so we have seen cabinet and council of ministers. Apart from that, we also have cabinet committees. So do we find the mention of these cabinet committees in the constitution? No, we do not find the mention. So that's why they are called as extra constitutional bodies, because we do not find the mention of these constitutional cabinet committees in constitution. Then from where have you borrowed this idea of cabinet committees? We have took the idea from various conventions, and we have included in the rules of business book of Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha. Okay, or rules of business provides for the cabinet committees. Now within these committees, there are some committees, they are called as standing committees, which are permanent in nature, and some committees which are called as ad hoc, which are temporary in nature. Standing is permanent, ad hoc is temporary. Okay, who will set up these committees? These committees are set up by Prime Minister. Okay, Prime Minister. Hence numbers and nomenclature varies. So that is why the number of people present in these committees, so it varies. Okay, it varies. So generally membership varies from 3 to 8. In some committees, the number of members may be 3. In some other, it may be 4, 5, 6, 7, or maximum 8. So usually these cabinet committees consist of cabinet ministers, but there may be some other ministers as well. For example, Minister of State or Deputy Minister as well. Next, most of these cabinet committees are headed by Prime Minister, but not necessarily, but most of them, they are headed by Prime Minister. Next, cabinet can review the decisions, very important. Okay, what is this? Cabinet can review their decisions. Now a cabinet committee, whatever the decision it has taken, so finally it goes to cabinet. Okay, cabinet. So here let us assume around 3-member committee have taken a decision, but later on a 15-member cabinet, so it can it can review their decision, and if it is not happy with the decision, then it can just discard that decision. It can discard the decision. What is the intention of creating the cabinet committees? The intention of creating the cabinet committees is to reduce the workload of cabinet. Okay, so if all the 15 members of the cabinet are involved on decision making with respect to one matter, then a lot of time will be consumed. So that's why in order to achieve the division of labor, they'll split their work among themselves. So 3 people will work on one matter, another 3 people will work on one matter. So in this fashion, what happens? The workload of the cabinet will be reduced by forming cabinet committees. And also it facilitates in-depth examination. Now, if all the 15 members of cabinet are involved in in-depth examination, then it will consume a lot of time. So 3 people will be involved in in-depth examination of a particular matter. Another 3 people will be involved in the in-depth examination of another matter. So in this fashion, so many different decisions can be taken in a shorter span of time because of this division of labor. Okay, division of labor. So among these important standing committees, few of the standing committees are listed. So one is Political Affairs Committee, next Economic Affairs Committee, and Appointments Committee. So all these 3 committees, they are headed by Prime Minister. So Prime Minister chairs all these 3 committees. And among these 3 committees, the most powerful is Political Affairs Committee. Okay, it is also called as Super Cabinet. Okay, Super Cabinet. Next, we have one more, Parliamentary Affairs Committee. So Parliamentary Affairs Committee, it is chaired by Home Minister. It is chaired by Home Minister. Okay. So in this class, we discussed about central cabinet ministers. So similarly, in the upcoming classes, we will be discussing about all the important chapters related to polity. For all our subsequent updates, subscribe to our channel and hit on the bell icon. Thank you.